Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're in for a ride as we're going to watch the 2020 South Korean comedy movie Secret Zoo. Kang Tae-soo serves as a temporary lawyer for JR Partners. Being a temp, Tae-soo faces problems getting access to the building and has to renew his card more frequently than others. Tae-soo very badly wants to make his job permanent and is willing to do anything to impress his boss. Due to the imprisonment of its vice president, JH Partners has faced some backlash from the public. There are people who are protesting at the main headquarters of the company, and one of them even gets his hand on JH Partners' head, Mr. Hwang. Tae-soo immediately rushes to his boss's rescue and manages to help him escape. His effort doesn't go in vain as Mr. Hwang has seen him struggling against the protesters. So one day, after finishing up his meeting with the head of Rockwoon Company, Min Shae, Hwang invites Tae-soo to discuss something. Tae-soo informs that he's been working as a temporary employee for 8 months, and due to his show of loyalty to the company a few days back, Hwang hands him a very important project, an opportunity to prove his worth and get a permanent position at the company. He finally gets the opportunity he always wanted. But what is this project? Hwang details that Tae-soo is required to revitalize a failing zoo in 3 months. A weird project for someone who has a law degree. But Tae-soo is desperate, so he agrees to the deal. With a new car gifted by his boss, Tae-soo drives to the zoo to serve as its new director. Upon reaching the zoo, Tae-soo finds out how tough his job is actually going to be. The parking lot is totally empty, and there are no visitors at all, not even one. However, Tae-soo is full of hope as he enters the Dongsun Park Zoo. His smile soon fades when he notices that the zoo doesn't even have animals. The zoo is totally deserted, and whatever remaining animals the zoo has are getting transported to another zoo. But there is a polar bear named Black Nose, who often goes out of control. The employees of the zoo are trying their best to get Black Nose under control, and Dr. Soo-won is at the very front of it. Tae-soo then makes his presence known and introduces himself as the new director. He soon finds out that the morale among the employees is pretty low. Through the employees, Tae-soo finds out that the zoo has a massive debt, and as a result, many animals were sold. There are only a handful of small animals that still remain in the zoo. As the meeting is going on, the previous director, Mr. Seo, stands up from his seat and wants to leave. Due to the mismanagement of the zoo and its failure to pay wages, many employees have already left their jobs, and the remaining ones also plan to follow suit. Tae-soo immediately stops them and assures them that he's here to save the zoo. But Mr. Seo reminds him that there are no animals in the zoo. If the problem is lack of animals, Tae-soo suggests, why don't we bring in more animals? But his colleagues remind him that it isn't as easy as it sounds. To bring in endangered animals like tigers and many others from outside, they need to prepare necessary documents, which can take up to 3 months. After the team dinner is over, Hae-kyung goes to her second job at a convenience store which is owned by Sung-min. Due to the lack of visitors in the zoo, Sung-min's store has also suffered a lot, and Hae-kyung actually lent him $30,000 to open that store. Why, you ask? Because they're dating. Meanwhile, the former and new director of the zoo are heading to their rooms and are a little tipsy. All of a sudden, Tae-soo sees a tiger and screams out in fear. Mr. Seo slowly walks towards the tiger and sees that it's his former employee trying to steal a tiger costume. Knowing how tough the lives of his former employees have been, Mr. Seo allows the poor employee to take the tiger costume and sell it. Next morning, Tae-soo informs his boss about the condition of the zoo, and how it's impossible to run it without animals. Mr. Hwang then tells Tae-soo to come back if he believes the job is too much for him. Afraid of losing his golden opportunity, Tae-soo assures his boss that he can and will do everything possible to get the zoo running. As he's thinking about what he can possibly do, Tae-soo notices a picture of a man in a tiger costume. He gets hit with an idea and informs his colleagues about the master plan. And the plan is that they will get in animal suits and act as one in the zoo. Hearing this, his colleagues aren't as enthusiastic as he thought they would be. The plan obviously sounds stupid, but Tae-soo tells them that since people who visit a zoo expect to see animals, they almost certainly won't realize the difference between real ones and a fake one. But no one believes in his idea and are ready to get up from the meeting. But former director Mr. Seo refuses to leave, saying he'll do anything to save the zoo. Slowly, Hae-kyung and Gun-wook also agree to go with the plan. However, Dr. So-won is still not convinced, and leaves the meeting promising not to get involved in any of their ideas. Knowing that Dr. So-won is an animal lover, Tae-soo persuades her by saying if their plan works, they can stop Black Nose from getting sold. With everyone on board, they head off to get the animal suits ready. They ask the designer to make the suits as realistic as he can. The designer assures them that he'll make everything look real and will complete these suits in 10 days. Next, they need to decide who's going to play what animal. Gun-wook takes the gorilla, Mr. Seo picks polar bear, Hye-kyung gets sloth, and since Tae-soo has to run the zoo, the remaining spot of lion goes to Dr. So-won. While Tae-soo gets busy promoting the reopening of the zoo, the others start to practice acting like animals they're going to play. Not only do they practice the walk of the animal, they research the entire behavior and slowly immerse themselves in the animal. Let's just pray they don't start replicating mating habits. The suits are also ready, and it sure does look realistic. Each of them has an earpiece through which they'll communicate with each other. The suits have a hose in the mouth which will let them hydrate themselves, and when they lift their right paw, the suit will let out the sound of the original animal. This is gonna get interesting. They'll all get in the suit and start doing what they had practiced in the last 10 days. It doesn't look that promising, but the reopening date is near, so they have no choice but to go ahead with whatever they have. Their first visitors involve a group of kindergarten students and old people. The kids first visit the sloth and then the lion. The kids desperately want to see the lion's tail, but Dr. So-won has no control over the suit's tail, so she quickly turns to not let the kids see it. Gun-wook gives a pretty good performance as a gorilla, but Mr. Seo gets performance shy and hides. Tae-soo immediately asks him to come out of his hiding, and Mr. Seo gets out in his polar bear suit. The first day of their opening goes without any troubles. The next day, after sitting in the same position for so long, Dr. So-won gets itchy, and luckily only a kid sees her scratching her back. Gun-woon almost throws a huge rock at a school couple for throwing rocks at him. Tae-soo once again has to talk to Mr. Seo and get him out of hiding. The ladies get excited to see the polar bear, and Mr. Seo almost steps in the water. Tae-soo immediately stops him as the suit is really expensive and water can ruin it. Everyone is doing their part, but they still don't have enough visitors to keep the zoo running. Tae-soo says they need a giraffe to get more visitors. A few minutes later, Gun-woo finds Hye-kyung crying. Turns out she was dumped by her boyfriend. Gun-woon is really furious at Sung-min, as he had taken Hye-kyung's entire life savings to open his store. So, to take revenge for his friend, Gun-woon shows up at the convenience store in his gorilla suit, scares Sung-min, and does his best to destroy the shop. Sung-min later calls the police, but he has no evidence to prove that he was attacked by a gorilla, as Gun-woon was smart enough to take the security camera footage. Sung-min believes Hye-kyung trained the gorilla to attack him. He enters the zoo and tries to get in contact with her, but Hye-kyung is in the sloth suit standing right in front of him. In order to not get caught by her ex-boyfriend, Hye-kyung begins to act like a sloth and tries to climb a tree. But since she's not a real sloth, she hilariously fails. Getting nervous, she gets up and starts running, which obviously makes Sung-min suspect something's going on. Sung-min finally catches up to Hye-kyung, and everyone in the zoo hears her scream. Gun-woon arrives in his gorilla suit and starts to beat up Sang-min, who sees a lion and polar bear running at him. The gig is over, and Sung-min finds out the real truth. He angrily shouts at Tae-soo for defrauding people. Gun-woo tries to attack him and calls him out for scamming Hye-kyung out of her money and time. Hye-kyung stops the fight and asks Gun-woo to apologize to Sung-min for beating him up and scaring him as a gorilla last night. Even though he doesn't want to, Gun-woo apologizes to Sung-min so that their secret is safe. With this problem solved, Tae-soo goes to the costume designer to order a giraffe suit, but he finds out that the designer has run away after failing to pay up his debts. Luckily, Tae-soo finds a fake giraffe, but just with its neck and head. Anyway, Tae-soo uses what he has and introduces the giraffe in the zoo. Mr. Seo, on the other hand, gets exhausted after wearing the suit for hours. Dr. So-won says that he needs to rest, which means that the zoo will have no polar bear. Tae-soo asks if they can use Black Nose, but the problem is, Black Nose is too aggressive to be put on display for humans. So that leaves Tae-soo having to put on the polar bear suit and take Mr. Seo's place. A man hits him with a Coke bottle and asks the polar bear to drink it, and then an old man follows him and throws a Coke can. Tae-soo finally realizes how hard it is to be a zoo animal on display. Hours go by, and under the scorching heat, Tae-soo gets exhausted and thirsty. He looks around and sees that no one is there to see him, so he picks up the Coke bottle and starts drinking it. But just then, a group of people arrive and are shocked to see a polar bear drinking Coca-Cola. Some of them have even managed to record it. After a tiring day of work, Tae-soo goes to his quarters and takes a well-deserved nap. Next day, Tae-soo goes to work to find out that there are hundreds of people waiting in line to get inside the zoo. Turns out that the video of him, or should we say the polar bear, drinking Coca-Cola has gone viral on the internet, and everyone is here to see the sensational Coke-drinking polar bear. Tae-soo and the others panic as to what they'll do. But Dr. So-won asks a very important question. They know that it was Tae-soo who drank the Coke and not the polar bear, but do the visitors know that? No, the answer is no. They'll just believe what they're shown. The zoo runners immediately rush to get the zoo open. As everyone impatiently waits for the popular polar bear, Tae-soo steps out in his suit. He manages to fool everyone, and then a kid throws a Coke bottle at him. Tae-soo grabs the bottle, coolly opens it, and chugs it down, ensuing the whole crowd to clap and cheer. And soon, business at the zoo takes off. With the help of Coke-chugging polar bear, thousands of people arrive to see the polar bear in action. Despite the number of other drinks lined up, the polar bear always chooses Coca-Cola. Now I'm starting to believe that this movie is just one big Coca-Cola ad. Anyway, moving on. Business is amazing, the zoo is running at a massive profit after a long time, and Tae-soo drinks more than just one can of Coke a day. Hey look, even the gorilla is drinking Coke now. And okay, one handstand by a gorilla is just overdoing it. One day after the zoo is closed, Gun-wook goes to visit Hae-kyung in his gorilla suit. After staying in one position throughout the day, Hae-kyung's legs have fallen asleep, so Gun-wook gives her a piggyback ride. If you haven't noticed yet, he's actually in love with Hae-kyung. That night, Dr. So-won is watching a video of Black Nose from when he was just a cub. She is emotionally attached to Black Nose as she met him 20 years back. It was her who fought for Black Nose when he was about to get sold. A few days later, Tae-soo informs his boss about the huge success of the zoo's reopening. Due to his performance, Hwang gives him a permanent position in the company. Tae-soo gets extremely happy and asks who's going to be the new director of the zoo. To his surprise, Hwang reveals that the plan is actually to remove the zoo and build a golf course for a brand new resort. He actually wanted Tae-soo to revamp the zoo so that the valuation of the site gets high, and they can sell the land to Rock On Company, who plans to build the new resort. Tae-soo asks his boss if maybe they can just let the zoo be, but Hwang tells him that his job is done and he'll handle the rest. Disappointed, Tae-soo heads to the zoo to let everyone know about what's going to happen, but he walks into a surprise party for his newfound success of the zoo. Tae-soo tries to tell them the truth, but he gets stopped when old employees arrive at the party and thank Tae-soo for saving not only the zoo but the lives of them and their families. Many of them have even left their current job to come back and help the zoo. Tae-soo is ghastly stressed as to how he'll break the bad news to everyone. Just then, an old employee comes and does it for him. He says that he heard some news about the zoo getting removed to accommodate golfing space for a resort. The worried employees check on the internet and find out that it's actually true. The distraught old employees head back to their homes and Tae-soo gets asked a few questions. He finally tells them that his company really is going to sell the zoo, and the people who were thanking Tae-soo a while ago are left disgusted and angry at him. One by one, everyone gets up and leaves, leaving Tae-soo alone. He goes back to his company and even gets his own office, but his mind is still not at ease for what's going to happen to the zoo. Mr. Seo gets hospitalized while trying to stop the people who are going to buy the zoo. He tells his colleagues that there's nothing they can do, but Dr. Soo-won isn't going to give up that easily. Next day, she opens the zoo with free entrance. With the large number of people who arrive to experience the zoo free of cost, the guards can't do anything but watch. The show goes on as usual, and Polar Bear gives its usual Coke-chugging performance. Meanwhile, Dr. So-won tries to educate the visitors on how Rock On Company is trying to destroy the zoo and the nature around it for its own benefits. Due to the negative publicity around the new resort, Min-chae is really displeased. Mr. Hwang assures her that he'll get rid of the zoo, and Min-chae gives him exactly 24 hours. Tae-soo tries to talk to Hwang and asks him yet again to save the zoo, but in return he gets told off and not to intervene in the zoo anymore. Tae-soo later sees Sung-min in Hwang's office, who tells him about how the zoo was being run by its employees with animal suits. Tae-soo confronts Sung-min and asks why he betrayed them. Sung-min then reveals that Hae-kyung had actually offered not to ask for her money back in return that he keeps quiet. But Sung-min hopes to get more money from Rock On Company. That's why he's helping them get rid of the zoo. Tae-soo finds out just how much Hae-kyung and the others love the zoo. As Hwang and his employee plan to inspect the zoo to see if the animals are people in animal suits, Tae-soo desperately tries to warn everyone about the incoming danger. Hwang arrives at the polar bear enclosure to see the coke-drinking polar bear. But when the polar bear doesn't make an appearance, Dr. So-won tries to stop him, but Hwang is adamant, and plus he has the authority as the zoo is under his company. Just then, Tae-soo arrives and gets handed a hard decision to make. Hwang tells Tae-soo that if he sides with him and helps him, he will get very successful at his company. But if he decides to go against him and help the zoo, Hwang will personally make sure that his career is over. Tae-soo decides to help the zoo. Hwang angrily steps towards the place where the polar bear is kept, while Mr. Seo in his polar bear suit quickly hides away from her sight. Believing it's just a person acting to be an animal, Hwang bangs on the cage, and the angry Black Nose pounces straight at him and tries to cause some serious harm. Unfortunately, he gets saved by the cage's iron bars, but Black Nose did his job, and now Hwang is scared and moreover convinced that the coke-chugging polar bear is indeed real. Black Nose, on the other hand, gets out of the cage and the crowd throws a coke bottle for him to drink. Meanwhile, the giraffe stand breaks and Hwang realizes, wait, so the zoo animals are fake. He once again goes to confront the polar bear, which he yet again believes to be fake. He forcefully gets into the enclosure and comes face to face with Black Nose. Oh my god, this is gonna be fun. Not for Hwang, obviously, but for us. Black Nose attacks Hwang, who, after realizing he was wrong, acts dead to save his life. Knowing Black Nose won't get calm, Tae-soo gets in the polar bear suit and steps in front of Black Nose, who lets go of Hwang but now attacks Tae-soo. As Hwang is brought back to safety, Black Nose bites the head of the polar bear suit and drags Tae-soo around with his powerful bite. Tae-soo somehow manages to get out of Black Nose's grip and survives to live another day. Tae-soo later apologizes to everyone for failing to save the zoo. He also volunteers to take full responsibility in case they're sued for defraud, but his former employees won't let him take the fall all by himself. Just when it seems there's no hope left, Tae-soo comes up with another plan. He goes to Rock-on Company head, Min Shae, and suggests what if she takes ownership of the zoo. Tae-soo suggests that she build her resort around the zoo and promote it as an eco-friendly resort. Not only will it save the zoo, but it will also help her save her company's face, as there's a lot of negative publicity around it. But there's still one problem. The zoo still belongs to Hwang and his company. Through little help from his friend, Tae-soo acquires some paper which proves Hwang's involvement in some really illegal activities. He anonymously sends those papers to Hwang and demands that he sells the zoo to Min Shae or else he'll end up in jail. The plan works, and exactly 1 year later, Min Shae presents her new ecological zoo resort, where animals will live freely and the resort will host Asia's largest ecological zoo. Black Nose has been sent to Canada where he's in a suitable environment for his mental health. Tae-soo and Dr. So-won arrive in Canada to see Black Nose living happily outside of a cage. Then they're stopped by some Koreans who recognize them for being the people who ran a fake zoo. This movie was actually really fun to watch, and I highly recommend that you watch the full movie if you get a chance. So that's the end of the video. Please leave a like as it greatly helps the channel grow, and also subscribe to the channel to not miss out on future videos.